Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mev.
My name is Katrina.
I used to co-chair communications prior to Greg, and
I'm the secretary.
yeah, so welcome. We also, both Katrina and I, do this stuff as our day job too. So we decided to take a PowerPoint that our previous Greg B, who moved to Boston. So I was gonna say he's no longer with us, but that makes him sound like he's dead, and he's not. He's still very much alive, and he's awesome. But so we kind of adapted a training that he had done, I don't know, again, a year or two ago. And this is that. So yeah, thank you for being here.
Okay, so why Canva? It's really easy to use compared to learning like Photoshop or Illustrator or anything like that. It's free for our users to use because we have a professional account. It gives us access to a lot of different resources that we wouldn't have if we were just using the free version. There's a lot of templates, there's color palette tools, you can save color palettes, you can upload pictures and files that you can use on different projects, and it's really easy to collaborate. So before you go to make a design, you just want to stop and think, what are you making? What is the text? And do you need specific logos or images? A lot of the logos that you'll use are already going to be on there. So you probably won't have to hunt for them, but we'll talk about kind of how to format your text and what are some good places to get images a little bit later. It's always easier to start with a template. I don't think there's anything worse than staring at a blank slide and trying to start from scratch. So usually when you're scrolling through templates, nothing's going to be like exactly what you want, but you can find something that is probably close enough. And Mav just showed the template versus how we changed it for our use. So sometimes it just needs a little bit of imagination to make it suit our needs. But there's a lot of things you can change: the color, the shape, any of the images, the text. I mean, there's basically, you can take any template and make it your own.
Well, I will just add really quick that sometimes I have definitely been in the position where like I opened a template and it didn't work for me, and I ended up just starting with a new document and like taking one little aspect of that template and bringing it over.
Yeah.
So, or I'll look at multiple templates and like, I like this part from this one and this part from that one, and kind of put it together. But when you're just starting out, this is like a really good way to start, so you can start developing those skills. And now I'm going to talk about visual design tips, like kind of overall. These are, you know, with any art related thing, like rules can be broken, but it's often helpful to know what the rules are first, and to, you know that you can meet those rules before you go and break them. So when you do break them, you're doing it purposefully. So visual hierarchy is kind of pretty self-explanatory. So size impacts emphasis. So look at the before, you know, they kind of look like the same size. Maybe it is the case where the whale is very far away, but obviously it's not making it. But when you do it like this, now the diver, it packs a little bit more of a visual punch. So the rule of thirds is a rule of thumb for composing visual images. An image should be imagined as divided into 9 equal parts by 2 equally spaced horizontal lines and 2 equally spaced vertical lines. And then the important compositional elements should be placed along the intersection of these lines. So you'll see like here, got your leaf over here. Yeah. So proponents claim that aligning a subject with these points creates more tension, energy, and interest than in compositions that are just like center focused. So you'll see like with that leaf, just a little off to the side instead of directly centered. And that can just cause for just a little bit more tension there. Color contrast also affects emphasis in an image. So it can help really bring your eye in. And then there's the 60-30-10 rule. So again, another design rule that's good for emphasizing key elements for visual balance and for keeping things simple and consistent. So the primary color takes up 60% of the space. It's often a neutral color and is used as the background. Secondary color should take up 30%. It often is used for typography, icons, and subheadings and subtitles. And then your accent color should take up 10%, which will highlight specific sections of the design, like buttons, call to action elements, or yeah, I'm cut off from my notes. Hold on a second. Call to action elements or any elements that need emphasis. So here's an example of it out in the wild. So you have, like with McDonald's, you have your red background, the 60, you've got your M, which is the 30, and then you have your McDonald's, which is the 10. And then here you have your blue, which is the 60, your heading in this case would be the 30, and then you've got your little design element. I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't know what that was initially.
I didn't they have a smiley face in there at one point? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been around for forever, but this is, and again, another example of it used in interior design. So you can find this all over the place. So
don't use images that you find on Google. I can't stress this enough. That just because they're on the internet doesn't mean that they're free for you to and legal for you to use. The resulting images that come up when you do a Google search include everything on the internet. So you're getting all the copyrighted, all the free to use, all the content. So it's illegal to use copyrighted images, and it's not nice to steal from artists and photographers, but there are several places you can go to get great high quality pictures, and they're listed there. Each of those is a website. So unsplash.com, pixabay.com, pexels.com, and flickr.com. And then within each of those tools, you can choose a license that is free to use, or they all have different levels of permission, but if you choose the one that says free to use or no copyrights, then you should be safe. And they all have sort of different specialties. Like Unsplash is usually like big, like kind of like sweeping photos, and Flickr has a little bit more, I feel like a little bit more variety.
Yeah, and you'll find like a lot of governmental organizations use Flickr as like their main thing because they have to be, I think, Creative Commons. So like if you go on there, Frederick Law Olmsted's historic site, they have all of his maps uploaded on there, which is relevant to us because he helped design Genesee Valley Park, Seneca Park, and Highland Park. So NASA is another example. They post a lot of stuff on
really
Flickr
good
as
space
well.
pictures,
amazing pictures. So yeah. Flickr's like a weird amalgamation of like real novices and state-of-the-art beautiful photography.
It also has the National Archives. So if you're doing something that has a historic reference, like I think we were doing a post about Harriet Tubman and we needed an image, and we found one there that was easy to use and free for us, and we knew it was accurate. And so that's just one situation where you might be using it.
And then the other one that I added kind of last minute here was Library of Congress. Now, not everything on Library of Congress is free to use. Just keep that in mind. We'll go more into like copyright stuff later, but this part of Library of Congress is definitely free to use. So understanding copyright. So public domain. I'm sure some of you have probably heard these terms before, but didn't really know what they are. So just real quick with copyright, it's intellectual property, somebody's intellectual property. You can register it with the US Patent Office. You don't necessarily have to. All of this can become a weedy court case very quickly. But so the easiest thing to kind of go over first is public domain. It usually applies to work that was published prior to 1928. I put an asterisk here because Walt Disney messed this up for all of us and started lobbied so that people could renew copyrights. And that kind of messed everything up a little bit. So just because it was published prior to 1928 doesn't necessarily mean that it's not held in the estate of someone. And that estate will come and sue you even though the person is dead. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing is published between 1928 and 1978 without a notice, which means that they didn't register it with the Patent Office. After March 1st, 1989, all works published and unpublished are protected for 70 years from the date of the author's death. So the example is the unpublished works of an author who died in 1943 are in the public domain as of January 1st, 2014. That being said, like I said, if that author if that author has an estate and their kids are managing it, they will come and sue you. So just be aware of that. But they also have to do that before the person dies. So that's also, again, some of this can end up being kind of a weedy legal situation where lawyers get involved and it's not fun. So if you can avoid it, just avoid it.
That's especially important if you're trying to use art in your social media posts, because people will get really feisty and send you a cease and desist, and we don't want that.
Yep. I actually know a photojournalist who started a fund. It's a scholarship fund for photographers, and it is 100% funded by her lawyers going out and putting cease and desists online, because it happens all the time. And it's not just, like us as a little organization. It's like the New York Times, like big publishers that should know better do this shit all the time, or do this stuff all the time. Sorry. But so it's can be frustrating, but it's also a protection for the artists themselves. So something to keep in mind. Corporate authorship, so that's something that was work made for hire. So in this situation, if I am, let me think of a major photographer. If I am Eugene Richards, famous photojournalist, and I have a piece that I took while I was working for a publication that was a work for hire situation, I, as Eugene Richards, do not own that image anymore. New York Times owns that image. So in that case, it's 95 years from the publication or 120 years from the creation. And like I said, all of this has an asterisk because Walt Disney had to go in and say, hey, we should be able to renew these things. So just something to keep in mind. The other thing is Creative Commons. You'll see this a lot on Flickr. So it's a standardized way to grant public permission to use creative work under copyright law. And when you see it, it's usually in acronyms. So you'll see CC a lot. So CC means Creative Commons a lot of the time. So if you see BY, it means that you must include the original creator's name in the work. So if you're making an Instagram post, just credit whoever the photographer was. SA is adoptions must be shared under the same terms, or adaptations must be shared under the same terms. So if you then create a piece from this, you have to, you can't copyright it yourself. You also have to provide it as a Creative Commons. NC is only non-commercial use of the works are permitted. ND is no derivatives. So NC is probably, that's won't really apply to us because we're not commercial entity. So that's at least helpful. ND means no derivatives or adaptations of the work permitted. So it needs to be published as is. You cannot edit. You can't do anything fancy that would take away from the original work. It has to be as published. So have a little exercise. can anybody tell me what CC, BY, and CND means?
It's you have to include the original creator's name. You can only use it non-commercial use and no derivatives or adaptations.
Awesome. Yeah, so this kind of becomes like a variable word salad that you can kind of pick and choose and put together. And you can learn more at creativecommons.com. Some of these have like icons that are associated with them if you're good at remembering those. So if you see that around, then that's what it's standing for. So now we go into fair use. So what I did a little I did a little experiment here, whereas this is Canva comes with a whole bunch of stock images that you can choose from. So in this case, this would be a non-derivative adaptation, or yeah, non-derivative of the work. I'm just putting it in there. I don't have to give a byline, but it's under Creative Commons, so I can use it without worrying about getting sued. This, if it was something that was not within that, I could arguably make a fair use case because I have now gone in and edited it to the point where it is not the same as the original image. So it permits the unlicensed use of copyright protected works in certain circumstances. So this is when you're kind of getting into like lawyers getting involved and them having to prove that this was a fair use case. Sometimes you can get away with it. Other times, I know like with YouTube, it can be a bit of a hassle. So things to keep in mind. It permits, so it looks at the purpose and the character of use. So usually if it's nonprofit or non-commercial, you'll be okay. Nature of the copyrighted work. So the creative imaginative work is less likely to support a claim of fair use than factual work. So if it's facts-based, obviously most people can use that. If it's a creative work that you're using, then you're getting into dicey territory. Amount substantiality of the portion used, which is both based on both quality and quantity. So like if it's a book, right? If you're publishing a paragraph from that book, that's fair use. That'll be fine. If you publish the whole book, that's not okay. If for a song, maybe you don't publish the whole song, but you only publish that line, but that line is the line of the song that everybody recognizes. Like if I say, shake it off, like most people are gonna be like, oh, Taylor Swift. And she's actually copyrighted like little tiny phrases. So keep that in mind. So it can be, even if it is just like a very small snippet, if it's a significant portion of it, then that could be getting into dicey territory. And then the effect of the use on the potential market, which is socialists like, okay, but so extent to which the unlicensed use harms the existing / future market for the copyright owner's work. So if what you use it for is going to then mean that the person who made it is not going to make any money, then that's a problem. My whole thing is when in doubt, leave it out. If you're not sure, then best not use it. That being said, posting on things like Instagram, maybe when you get into memes and stuff like that, that's like a whole other territory that becomes a little more dicey. Like maybe if you post a meme online, it's okay then, but if we're putting it in like our brochure and somebody sees it, that might not be kosher. So not all of this is very cut and dry. So like when in doubt, leave it out or ask somebody and we can do a little more research. If we're posting it as a chapter, then it might be something like we've posted memes before. So it's not like, oh, we can't post anything that's like copyrighted, but you know, we want to choose our battles, so to say.
So the most common formats that you're going to be using in Canva are going to be Instagram posts, Instagram stories, which are the same size as Facebook stories, Facebook events, and print media. And those numbers are the resolution that you'll need for each of those file types. And the nice thing about Canva is it basically does that for you. If you go in and you say, I want to make an Instagram post, it will automatically be square. It will automatically be 1080 by 1080. If you say, I want to make a Instagram story, it will be the right size. And if you want to make a flyer or postcard, they will also give the option so that you can make it the correct size and you don't end up with something that won't print or will look weird online.
So Canva introduced last year their AI tools, and they refer to it as magic. So whenever you see magic on Canva, it means that there's some sort of AI, something going on with it. So magic design, you can type into the search box, like what you want to make, like say you do Instagram post, and then in that drop down, and we'll go over this later, there's an option where you can start from media, and if you upload a photo, it will then take your photo and it'll pop it into a design based off of what you type in there. So that's kind of cool. Magic Write appears when you left click on text boxes, and you can do it to continue writing, so it'll make whatever you have there like longer. Can summarize, so it'll shorten what you've written. You can rewrite it, hit more fun, more formal, sprinkle fairy dust, which makes it sound a little more like a fairy book. It's a little silly, or fix spelling. So you can play around with those, it'll give you suggestions. As like my rule of thumb with AI is like, cool, but not by itself. Like usually you need to, it'll give you some ideas and then you can work with it from there. But don't just let it do its own thing without checking it, because it might sound weird or look weird. And when we get to the images, you'll see what I'm talking about. So resize and magic switch, again, another tool that's depending can be very useful or not so much. But it takes, if you're looking on like an Instagram post, you can go to the top and hit resize and magic switch and choose a different dimensions, and it will then you'll hit, magic switch, and it will pop that design onto the new dimensions. And sometimes it translates really well and sometimes not so much. So, if you're going from like a square to like a postcard, probably won't have to do too much editing. But if you're going from like a square to like a Facebook event or like a newsletter banner, that's going to look weird and you're going to have to do a lot more fidgeting with it. Magic morph, transform text and shape. I've only used this a little bit. Like you can make balloon characters out of this. Feel free to have fun with it. And if you learn something new, like tell me, because I haven't used it much. So text to video and text to image is pretty explanatory. It's one of those things where you type in kind of like on Midjourney or whatever, roses in Van Gogh style, and it'll take from Canva's library of things and give you that AI platter, which, thoughts on there's conversations to be had on like ethics and how to use that stuff, but we're not going to go into that in this presentation.
And just so you know, there's only a limited number of those you can do per month. Like, I think that, we have like a lot of them. We have like 400 per month, I think. But once we reach the end of that, then they will start charging for it.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah. That is good to know.
So play around with it. I used it a little bit to see what it could do. But if you get really into it, you might just want to go to Midjourney.
That's a good point. Magic edit is add to, replace, or edit images with a written prompt. Why am I not remembering what grab and expand? Oh, I'm going to get into that later. That's why. We'll get into the different visual editing. And then if you're in Canva on the homepage, you can find more tutorials under Magic Studio, and it'll show you all the different things, and it'll give you like, you can click on it and it'll give you a design that you can play around with, which is very helpful.
Now we're going to talk about the Rock DSA brand kit. when you have consistency and good design, it builds trust among the people that use your social media and your website. And by that, I mean, like, when you go to your bank website, it looks a certain way. Their social media looks a certain way. It looks like their website. And so you're like, okay, these two things go together. If you were looking for a new doctor and their website was in Comic Sans, you would be concerned. And you'd be like, this doesn't make me feel good, even if you're not sure why. And so being consistent helps us spread the message, but also, you know, reinforces that Rock DSA is part of DSA and is part of this larger organization. That being said, the brand kit includes specific colors, fonts, and logos. And the nice thing is that Canva saves all that stuff for us. So when you go to make a design, you'll have access to all of these palettes. So you can say, I need this to be red. And then you'll be like, not that red. And then you'll spend 15 minutes trying to find the right shade of red. But anyway, I digress. And so this is just a small portion of the colors that are on there. But it'll give you a starting point so you don't have to always remember like what the specific DSA red is. There's also fonts that are saved in Canva, so you don't have to remember what the fonts are. We'll go into that in a second. And the brand kit that's in Canva is like the basics, what you need to make a design. But there's also a larger design manual that we have on the shared drive. And that has more information about accessible language, about how to, yeah, there you go. Thank you. So the brand kit that we have in the design manual that we made are based on the DSA national content. You can go to the DSA website and look at what they have available. And then the Rock DSA brand and brand kit is basically the DSA brand kit plus the information that I talked about, inclusive language, images, accessibility, and that's on the shared drive. So you can go there and find out how we talk about how, as a group, we decide to talk about genders, how we talk about people with disabilities, things like that, so that we're consistent and sensitive to everybody that might be a part of our organization. Fonts are important. Like the top font is like, oh, that could be from your mom, that could be nice. And that bottom font has a knife and it is waiting for you. So just when you're thinking about your design, you want to make sure that it matches up with what you're trying to say should be said in the image, as well as the font that you're using. Like, you wouldn't want to use this ransom font for like a baby shower or something like that, because it would be strange and you would feel weird. And so just to make sure that the message is coming across clearly, you want to make sure that you're using the right font. But we make that easy for you because there are fonts saved in Canva. We use Manifold and Klima. I've never said that out loud. Is it Klima or Klima? I don't know. Anyway, they're saved in the brand tab. The brand tab is going to be your best friend because it has all the colors, all the fonts, everything that you need to get started in making a new image. Quick note, most of the fonts that we use as an organization are sans serif. The text on the left is a serif font, and the text on the right is a sans serif font. We want our text to look more like the text on the right. The way that you can tell the difference is serif fonts have little feet. So if you look at the end, the top and the bottom of the S, the top and the bottom of the T, there's a little, there's just a little bloop, a little foot, and that is what makes it serif versus sans serif. Sans serif is easier to read for people with learning disabilities, and it's also faster for people to read. Headings and hierarchy. The title of your image should be short and clear. If you're going on to 3 lines with the title, you might want to sit with that for a second and see if you can find a title that's more concise. Headings should decrease in size as you move through a message. So you have your title, which is going to be the biggest, and then you have a smaller one, and as it gets smaller, it breaks it down into meaningful chunks. when you are designing things for the web, you want to keep it between 14, generally keep it between 14 and 24 at the smallest. The font that we used on this slide is 20 point. If you're printing something, you don't want to go lower than 14, just because then it becomes difficult for some people that have issues with reading, or even if your font gets like a little smudged, it can make it really challenging. Left align, just left align. Sometimes you may feel like everything should be center aligned, and I get that, but left align is generally the best. And that's because when someone is using a screen reader to look at content, they go top to bottom, left to right. And that's how this organization is organized, how this text is organized, so that it makes sense. If you have it like this, which is bad, we don't do it, then it's gonna make it harder for screen readers. It's also not how we read things in English. We don't start on the right hand side. So you already have like another cognitive step that you have to make before you process all that text. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but brains get tired real easy. Leading and kerning. So, I meant to find a funny picture of the kerning. I forgot. So, leading is the line spacing. I think everybody's done a paper where it had to be double spaced. And, you tried, maybe if I did 2.5 space, maybe I don't have to write as much and maybe no one will notice. People will notice. So you just want to make sure that your lines have enough space that they're not tripping over each other and people can clearly read them. Kerning is so important. Sometimes if your letters are too close together, they can look like other letters, and those letters can spell out either swear words or slurs or just things that you just don't intend at all. And so if you're running out of space and your letters are really close together, just take a minute, look at it as if it's the first time you're looking at it. Maybe have someone else look at it and say, can you still read what this says? And then they'll tell you if it says something funny.
And real quick on this one, just why isn't it just letter spacing and line spacing, which is what it's called in Canva? This is just like the graphic design terminology, which is a holdover from printing press days. So if you're like putting out, and actually there's a lot of printers around Rochester that still do it the old fashioned way. When you're laying down your type, the leading is an actual like piece of either wood or metal that would have been put in between the lines when you're laying out your text on a printing press. And then the kerning was the name of the they're like little tiny metal or wood bits that would be put in between the letters to keep them nicely and not just to keep them aligned correctly. So each thing is going to be like 1 point or 2 points, and it'll be consistent. Okay, so this is my fun section. My background's in photography, so this is my favorite part. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with images, and the best thing to do is, the way to get into this is when you're in a design, in the left-hand menu, thinking of something else. If you, let me just go from my notes because that makes more sense. When you have a design open, you can either search for images or graphics using the Elements tab, or you can upload your own using the Upload tab. And these are all going to be in the left-hand menu when you have your design open. Drag the image you desire into your design. Make sure the image is active by, having it left-clicked. Then look at the top menu options and you will see there's a little Edit Photos button. When you click that, it'll open up a tab on the left with a lot more options. So you can flip horizontally and vertically, which can be really useful when you're doing something like this. So this is one element that was facing this way, and then we got to get it fit on all the sides by flipping it. You can set your border weight and corner rounding. So this is like the most intense if it's like at its edge, but you can play around with that and finesse. Then you have background remover. This is my favorite tool. For any of you who remember like the early 2010s Photoshop days with the lasso tool going like point by point by point, and if you messed up, you would have to start all over again. Yeah, we don't have to do that anymore. Yay! So all you have to do is hit the background remover button and it'll do it for you. Again, it's AI, so I would say out of all their AI tools, this is the one that's like the most robust and works the best. Sometimes you'll get it's not that great, but it allows you to then either with a brush, you can then go in and like erase or add in. So that's really helpful. Adjust just allows you to adjust, kind of like in Photoshop, if you're familiar, adjust brightness, contrast, hue, darks, whites, blacks, color, temperature, and tint. You can also do specific color edits and change the hue. So for this, I was able to take all of that like nice little like lilac-y purple and make it blue. Just make sure I got everything on this slide. Yes. Magic Expand allows you to use the AI generation to expand an image. This can be useful if you need more background room to include text, or if you need to adjust a design for different dimensions. Like I said, when you're magic switching and you're taking that square to a Facebook thing, this can be very helpful. Although I wanted to leave this as is, I probably did it like tried to regenerate this 5 times. It doesn't look super grand, but you know, and even up here, like it kind of works. So I know Adobe has the same feature that works a little bit better, but this is there in a pinch. Magic Edit, again, their AI tools are varying levels. So for this, what I did was it allows you to brush over a certain area and then type in text to edit it. So for this, I just brushed over the lilacs. And then I inputted replace with sunflowers, and that's what we got. I don't know what exactly is going on over here or up here, but that's kind of the nature of where AI is at right now. So it can be fun to play around with, but it's not like the best. Magic Erase is actually still pretty good. It's kind of like the healing brush in Photoshop if you're familiar. So if you can see here, I was able to just go in and get rid of that, and it looks better because it's a darker area of the image. So maybe if I printed this out on like a poster, you might be able to see it, but if you know I'm just posting it on Instagram, unless somebody is like there with their little magnifying glass, nobody's going to pick up on it, and the resolution's not even there that they'll be able to see it. So it works. Magic Grab allows you to brush over a certain aspect of the image, and then it kind of detaches it from the image, so you can then move it around in different places. Drop shadow, or they just shadows in general, you can add different types of shadows to the image to make it look a little more three-dimensional. Duotone brings it down to just 2 colors, and then you can play around and set those. So this is like an indigo and a red, but you can do everything, and they have some presets that are like nice names like blush and dusk and dawn and moonlight, and it's fun to play around with. Pixelfy, I don't know what you would use this for, but I put it in here. It's if you want to make the image more pixelated looking. And then image upscaler is doing the exact opposite. I haven't really tested this out a lot, so this would be useful if like you go on the internet and you grab an image that's maybe 72, it's very small, it's like this big, and you want to print it so that it's like this. I'm not in the camera correctly. And you want, so it's like this, and you want to make it a lot bigger. So this theoretically will play with the pixels on like a very like minuscule level to make it so that when you print that larger version, it's not gonna end up like the picture on the left, all pixelated. Again, I haven't tested this out much, so I don't know how good it is, but if you guys use it for anything, let me know how it goes. And then mock-ups, I had never used this before. This I figured out while getting ready for this presentation, and I love it, and I'm probably gonna use it more frequently in things. But it just allows you to take an image and plop it into different scenarios. So it's good for, you know, I think the device thing is the best. Like you can plop it so it's like on a computer screen, or this is like an Instagram post. This is a frame. This is like an image that's just like hanging. I don't know. It's fun to play around with. And yeah, that's it for images for now.
Accessibility, mostly you're going to be using alt text, alternative text, which is the text that shows up if the image is not available, or the text that a screen reader sees. So it serves two different purposes. You want to make sure that all your visual elements, including logos, diagrams, photos, and charts, have alt text. Web editors and social media platforms all have different ways of adding alt text, but it's usually somewhere in the photo editing panel. The picture above is what it looks like in Facebook. So there's usually a generated alternative text, which sometimes it's close and sometimes you just need to make a little change here and there. Sometimes it's also total nonsense. So you want to just make sure that you're reading it and looking at it and seeing if it actually describes the picture before you use it. The next slide, we're going to talk about some alt text and kind of like a good, better, best scenario. Oh. Okay. So if you were using this picture on Instagram or Facebook, you would want to make sure that there was alt text for it. And so a good alt text would be people with signs at a protest. It tells you what it is. It's very basic. It doesn't give you a lot of detail. A better version is young people protesting with signs in an urban area. Okay, so now you know that it's probably in a city, and you know that, you know, it's not a bunch of old people protesting with signs. And then the great version is a group of young people at a protest holding signs, and then you list what the signs say, and you talk more about the background and the foreground. It can get really time consuming. So just do the best that you can with the time that you have, and don't skip this step, because it's really important that all people that are seeing our content can access it, even people that are low vision or that may be using a screen reader to access the content.
And I do know, I just learned this past week. I was at a disability employment summit, and there was a gentleman who did a presentation on assistive technologies, and I'm forgetting the name of it. It's a Microsoft tool, but it's basically, it's a tool where you can pop this in and it will generate the alt text for you.
Oh, nice.
Which for a person that, you know, is using, like, it's really cool. You can hold up your phone. It's like an AI thing, and you can like set it to currency. And if you hold a $20 bill up to it, it'll say, you know, this is a $20 bill, or, you know, chairs, stuff like that. So there are shortcuts as well out there. It's just a matter of finding where they are and whether you have to pay for them or not.
Oh, also, if you're sending this like in an email or as part of a newsletter, sometimes in email the images get blocked, and the alt text will tell the person what the image was supposed to be of. So it kind of serves a dual purpose. So you just don't have a little tiny X where your picture used to be.
Okay, so Canva last year added a QR code generator, which was awesome. It's under the app section, which is in that left-hand menu that we keep referring to. Basically in Canva, you've got your left-hand menu and you've got your top menu, and that's where like most of your stuff's gonna live. If you use a QR code, make sure to also include a short link that is easy to remember or jot down. This is especially important, like if you are, in a presentation like this, if, anybody here could then hold up their phone and scan the QR code. Or if it's like on a poster or stuff like that is helpful, but not everybody has a QR code scanner. So that's important to keep in mind. And that being said, you want to make sure if you have your URLs, like especially like if you're sharing something like a Facebook event, it'll be like Facebook/ST capital H blah, like you're never gonna remember that. So what's good is to, if like for our website is rockdsa.org, awesome, short, easy to remember, leave it as is. If it was something like if it was Rochester Democratic Socialists of America, maybe we would want to do bit.ly/rockdsa, because that's easy to remember. So that's bit.ly will take those long links that you have, and we'll shorten it. There are other tools aside from bit.ly. That's just the one that we kind of use as a chapter. I think there's shortened URL. There's other ones too. And there's free and paid versions of it. If you want to pay, you can get analytics tracking. And the important thing to know is that it's case sensitive. So if it's bit.ly, uppercase all rockdsa, and I type in lowercase rockdsa, the website's not going to pop up. So that's something to keep in mind.
The final step is downloading and exporting. So when you're done with your image and you're ready to put it on social media or print it, you want to make sure that it's going to look good wherever it goes. So if the thing that you made has text and image, you want to save it as a PNG. These different file types are all different sizes. So a JPEG, which is what we traditionally save images as, is the smallest of the three. A PNG is slightly larger, but that's because it has more visual information, and it'll keep your text from looking blurry if you go to look at it on a larger screen. And for printing, you want to make sure it's a PDF print with a CMYK color profile. CMYK refers to the printing colors, and there's two different kinds. There's RGB and CMYK. CMYK is the one that's going to give you the best output.
And CMYK, again, for the print nerds, CMYK is if you might notice it from if you change out print cartridges. So it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And then, so that's for printed media because of inks. And then RGB is for light. So all of our light, like when you're looking at white light, it's made up of 3 channels, red, green, and blue. We just don't see that. So if you're online, that's a screen, which is a white, this white light emitter. So that's why if you're doing something online, you want to keep it in RGB. If you're printing anything, you want to keep it in CMYK. And this is it. Thank you for coming on this journey with us. We are going to, stay here, give you guys an opportunity. I see some of you brought your laptops. Those of you who are on Zoom can play around with it. We will be here to answer any questions that you have. I don't know if you want to go through and maybe demo something really quick. So this is the screen. So we made this in Canva. So there's your top menu up there. And then you have your side menu here. So you have design, which will come up with like different templates that you can choose from if you're like not sure where to start. Styles will give you like different color things to play around with. Elements is where you can find different design elements. So if you like search for roses, you can look at graphics, photos, videos, shapes. What else is on here? Frames, audio. There's a lot. The main thing that I usually use is graphics and photos. And you might recognize some of the photos that were in this presentation. Didn't spend too much time looking for special pictures of roses.
The little crown symbol that you'll see on some of the images means that they're available only for Canva Pro users, where we have a Pro account, so you'll be able to use anything. that you find on there. But you'll just notice that some of them have that and some of them don't.
And the ones that don't, you are good to use. And even if you don't have a pro account, it does give you an option. If you add something that is a pro element, it does give you the option to purchase those elements when you go to export them. If you don't want to get a pro account for one design. This is where in text, what's helpful is that it'll have the brand kit right on top there. And then you can also search for fonts. There's your brand kit. So it's got all of our logos, our colors, all in one place. We haven't added anything to like our voice or stuff like that, but things you can play around with outside of DSA. This is just where all of our uploaded files go, and then you can record yourself. They have a draw feature, which is, kind of like MS Paint. That's how I wrote the fair on top of the slide on fair use. And then projects, this shows all the designs that we have. So you can go in and say, all right, I need to go and work on the red star template. Please don't click on this. Greg's been working very hard on it. We don't want to mess it up. So, but just as an example. So yeah, so you can play around with that when you click on elements. Then you have your own text editing options. You can position things, little top left align. This is transparency. So I can go here and say, I'm like, oh, these are too distracting. I'm gonna just bring this down a little bit. And it blends in with the background. And depending on what colors you have going on, this can look really cool too. And then lock just keeps things in position. So once I lock it, it's like, I can't move this. It's very helpful because they have layers, but it's like not as robust as Photoshop, if you're familiar with that. So like, this is, say I want to move this behind the flowers. I can do it like that, or if I right click on here and I go to layer, I can say bring forward, or that was very fast. Hold on a second. Layer, send backward, we'll send it like back behind whatever it's on. Send to back, we'll send it all the way to the last layer, back layer. Yeah, I think we've given you guys enough to be dangerous. So